What's up, witches? Bring it! I am back with some more messed up origins. Now, I am not doing Harry Potter anymore, or at the very least, not in this episode. I've just watched the first Maleficent film now, and I'm gonna do a video on it. You don't know how long I've been wanting to make this video. So, at the end in Maleficent 2, it is revealed that Queen Ingrid had been spreading a false story about Maleficent, portraying her as a villain, and this false story is basically the animated Sleeping Beauty. Okay, so I am going to give you a recap of the animated Sleeping Beauty, so it's fresh in your head. Once upon a time, there was an Indian queen who longed for a child, and they got a beautiful daughter called Aurora. Everyone in the kingdom was invited to christening. Two of the fairies, Flora and Fauna, had given their gifts, and Meriwether was going to give her gift when suddenly Maleficent appeared, who cursed Aurora to a sleep like death. Meriwether had to waste her gift in softening the curse so that she'll fall asleep for 100 years. Okay, the three fairies raised her in the cottage where she was known as Briar Rose. Some time ago, when she was 16, she meets Prince Philip, who thought that he was just a commoner and vice versa. And they fall in love, and she tells the fairies, but they tell her she is a princess and she has to marry a prince. They take her to the castle, but she clicks a finger and falls asleep, of course. Maleficent kidnaps Prince Philip and locks him in a dungeon, but he escapes, so Maleficent turns into a dragon, but Philip kills her. He kisses Aurora and wakes her up, and they live happily ever after. So that was the animated version that Queen Ingrid spread around in the second Maleficent film. Now we're going to go on to the real story about Maleficent. Once upon a time, there was a pure-hearted, powerful fairy named Maleficent who met an orphaned boy from the past called Stefan. They spent time together. And on Maleficent's 16th birthday, Stefan gave Maleficent what he said was true love's kiss, but it wasn't to be. After a battle between Maleficent and the King's army, King Henry says that whoever kills Maleficent will marry his daughter and become king. Stefan wanted to do it, but he couldn't bring himself to kill her, so he cut off her wings, which I believe, and I personally believe that happened in the Disney animated Sleeping Beauty too. So anyway, he presents the wings to King Henry, who appoints him as his successor, and of course they end up christening with Aurora, but Maleficent, of course, curses her to a death-like sleep, and it was she who softens it to true love's kiss. Softens it to being awoken by true love's kiss. Okay, so yeah, the fairies and ways Aurora in the cottage, but in this one she's still known as Aurora instead of Briar Rose. Maleficent watches from afar, knowing that if Aurora dies by neglect, that hers will not work. So she saves Aurora a couple of times and meets her a few times, and after getting used to her, thanks to her own curse, she tries to revoke the curse but doesn't succeed. Meanwhile, in the palace, Stefan becomes paranoid, even neglecting to see his own wife on her deathbed. Eventually, when Aurora turns 16, Maleficent invites her to live in the moors. Aurora tries to tell her adoptive aunts, but they tell her that she's a princess and Maleficent was the one who cursed her. So Aurora goes back to the castle, eats a finger, and falls asleep. Maleficent brings him to kiss her, but that doesn't work. So Maleficent apologizes to Aurora and kisses her, which wakes her from the kiss of motherly love. And yeah, after a brutal battle between Stefan, which resulted in Stefan's death, Maleficent appoints Aurora as Queen of the Moors, and they all lived happily ever after. Now, as for the false story, which again was the animated Sleeping Beauty, I like to think that tale spread to the Beast's kingdom in Beauty and the Beast. And I mean the live-action remake of that, not the animated one. Because why else would the Beast's father teach him to be cruel? Because he wanted to train him to be just like good King Stefan. Okay. So that concludes this video. And don't forget, John shot first.